The end of the podcast. Hello, everybody. So I wanted to make this, to be honest, I should have made this video about 2 months ago. But of course, as you know, a lot of the time when it comes to the channel, we cover as much relative things as possible. You know, when there's a new event, we'll cover a guide for it. We'll dissect it. We'll look into it. News and information, we try and get that as much as possible out to people just so they're well informed. So I did want to make this back in November, but this seems a good time as any, especially as I'm taking not a break, but I'm kind of like easy going on stuff and trying to chill out a little bit and kind of work on my account, because that's one of the things that we're going to touch upon in this this particular video. So back a couple of months ago, and me and Dan messaged in DMs about stuff, and here's the thing, you know, Dan put out this to say all things, and of course that means, you know, all things come to an end, and there's a lot of kind of like, you know, important takeaways from this. He says, so I haven't been around at all in the past couple of months to alleviate any concerns. Nothing bad happened. I'm fine. My family's too. Simply put, my responsibilities at work have grown to the extent where I'm no longer reliably focused on MCC on a day-to-day level, and I don't have the energy to produce content, putting others, both my family and co-workers, in situations where they can best succeed has been primary focus and will continue to be for the foreseeable future. Learning about myself, and how I can grow into a better and more responsible leader has taken up my creative juice. Being a reliable person is one of my core values in life, and I can't do that if I stretch myself too thin. Understanding what that means for me continues to be an up and down process, but overall I'm headed in the right direction. So yeah, I mean, look, for a lot of you like know, like Dan is very high up in the running of events that you might go to a theater and in America and watch a show, watch a performance, watch an event, go to a VIP type event at a theater or location, and the person that is in charge of this being a smooth operation is Dan. You may have even gone to a show of Dan's and not realized that is the case. Dan was even saying stories on the podcast. I think it was like Mike Tyson he met at one stage. So there's a lot of things that Dan is responsible for, and of course this just makes sense. As a lot of us know, the game should not live in anybody's head rent free. It should be a case like it's enjoyable. A lot of the time MCOC is more stressful than it kind of should be, because there's so many things going on. Look, that's the problem. When a game starts off very small, very basic, it then gets more complex in order to keep you well engaged and also continuing on. But of course, there is a cost to that. That's why I say the only game that I cover on my channel is MCOC, because it takes up a lot of my life and I have a daytime job as well. I mean, yeah, here's the thing. Like, me and Dan still would do kind of like episodes, and the episodes over the last year have been very kind of sporadic when it came to the podcast. If you go to our SoundCloud at the moment, you'll probably notice there's only 2 episodes. That is because I've disabled the feature that allows this to be beamed out. So SoundCloud has this thing where if you pay the premium, because I had to pay for it, it was at a cost. This is the thing, like, I didn't make any. There's no money making in this podcast that we posted. It was just 2 friends sitting down and talking. But of course, when you take off the premium payment, you don't get all of your episodes on there. So if you do want to see back any of the episodes, no, you won't be able to go to SoundCloud. Go to Spotify, but you'll have to go to the tab. So if you go to like my channel, there is a tab which is under podcasts. You click that podcast and it will come up, so you can see the full episodes. And of course, like, we go back in time, like we go really back in time, over 3 years. We had a very kind of up and coming karate Mike that came on the podcast, and also one of our very first episodes, actually episode 2, had Metal Sonic Dude, so that was pretty amazing, and we had a great time. We've had some, I think one of the greatest things was it took so long. Here's the thing, I would have loved to have had more Kaban based guests, but I think there's, and it's not my kind of place to kind of say, you know, whether or not any Kabam representatives or Kabam people were receptive to it. It just kind of like things evolved from it, you know, thanks to Kabam Jax, you know, for coming and doing the podcast, because I think he was our only Kabam representative that agreed to do the podcast. Everyone else just wasn't really interested, or I don't know. I really don't know what goes on behind the scenes between, you know, my relationship with Kabam, what Kabam actually, you know, think towards me, and what, you know, whether or not there's animosity there. I don't know. I don't really get into the politics matter, but it was kind of like we wanted to have more guests. But this is the biggest kind of issue that we had, was timing and availability. Timing and availability was always an issue. It I think got worse as things changed, obviously for myself and for Dan, and trying to find a good time slot for stuff. You know, we tried to kind of like do a Sunday where it was a little bit easier. Then it was a case of like I had to be available for certain meetings when I worked for Final Strike Games, and became, you know, near impossible, you know, during the 9 to 5 new job that I had as of June of this year, which, you know, Dan even says here, like, finally to my podcast partner in crime, RichTheMan, it was a privilege recording all those episodes with you, even though I often had to wake up at 5 a.m. to record it. It was always a blast, the best part of my MCC content creation experience. Rich, you are a true saint to the MCC community. You care so much, and I hope that you know people genuinely appreciate that. I know you, I know I do, and I wish you and Em all the best. And it's the thing, like, I spoke to Dan in DM, so don't, because I'm putting this video out now and it's kind of been 2 months later, it's just a case of like this month has been, these last 12 days of this particular month, which is, you know, easygoing month. As I said, I'm trying to focus. I'm trying to like put all the video content I want to make to the side so I can focus on my account, and also just some stuff behind the scenes. So just kind of like, you know, just getting some kind of good vibes in, but also kind of take the time to kind of like, you know, just sit back and take in what was been this last year. And of course, you know, it's sad, isn't it? Like, I massively appreciate Dan waking up at 5 a.m. to kind of record his time to record. But that was the issue, like trying to find available time as the year went on. Dan is, you know, he needs to be, as he said, functioning towards making the business that he works for the most effective as possible. Because look, there still might be people out there going like, well, I don't even know who Dan is. I don't know who what Frontline MCOC is. And here's the thing, like, Dan's been around for such a long time, since well, I mean, look, he joined in August of his Twitter account, joined in August of 2019, and I met Dan at the 2019 New York Comic Con. It's 2024 now. You know, this is like, yeah, time goes on, and of course, I'm sure people were kind of like concerned to go, okay, well, Dan hasn't posted on Twitter in such a long time, and I'm sure that will kind of like, you know, people might have been quite concerned with that. But, you know, this is the thing about sometimes, and we hear about retiring quite a bit. I mean, the last, a few days, like, people on YouTube have talked about, you know, retiring. Look, this is each to their own, but as I said, like, you know, life is important. And as Dan said, Frontline was a lot of fun while it lasted. I'd like to think some of my work here in some small part contributed to Kabam's increased communication and understanding of community needs, particularly on the forums when discussing events and side quests. Well, I totally agree with that. And I think that a lot of people will, you know, Dan, was part of our the content contributor program. He was part of the CCP. So of course, you know, he's been a pillar of the community. And also he says that please don't take this as quitting the game post. I'm still playing and enjoying the game very much. I just need to be able to disappear from the Battleground for a day or two without impacting anyone else trying to progress. Well, that's such a key point for alliances. I'm actually close to 100%ing Act 6 after all these years. A final tip, if you're waiting to 100% Act 6 and have acquired a Gallon, let's just say that content is not tuned for his ability set. I need to try that out. I'll take that with interest. A thank you list is always dicey propositions of people who inevitably feel left out. Of course, you know, thanked a load of people for that. And of course, there was a shout out to Chunky B. Chunky B comes out of the woodwork a lot of the time. It's always good to kind of see that name. And I also like names. If you're new to MCC, you probably won't know that name as well as many other names of the past. So yeah. Now in the future, I would like to still collaborate. I did even say this to Dan, like I'd like to collaborate with him on a new project, but I don't know when or what that would be. Maybe it will be when MCOC dies. I mean, look, I'd love the game to continue on as much as possible, but of course everything does have a shelf life. However, you look at other things like Marvel Strike Force, still going. Marvel Future Fight, still going. So, look, this game, MCC still has legs, and whilst there's a community to kind of still go, I'm sure Kaban will still go at the same time. So, I don't think you're getting rid of me anytime soon. But I would really like to work with Dan. I think we're equally, you know, on the same level that we could record a new podcast or do a new project or cover a new game. But here's the thing. It's going to be time. And it's like, I can imagine that when me and Dan eventually get to do a project, we'll probably be at a point where we've both started like retiring of some description. And so that's several years down the line. But I know people might kind of say that's a bit of a weird thing to say, but it's like, that's still a thing. You always keep everyone in your mind. And then there does come a time where you unite back again. And it's like, look, I know time is fleeting, but there's always something that everything comes round circle. And of course, I'm very much looking forward to collaborating with a project with Dan. There's a lot of things that equally kind of, you know, on the same level that we both enjoy, from, you know, gaming in general, Pokemon cards, Pokemon in general. There's very many, there's a lot of things that, but I don't know when, I don't know what, but it will happen one day. The podcast itself will remain as a tab. You can click and watch back some of the older episodes, or listen. Do bear in mind, we didn't really get to like the visual portion of it towards, it wasn't till the end, like the last kind of, I want to say 50 episodes, we started turning on the video camera side of things. So a lot of the earlier stages, I was just playing the game, or playing MCOC, and kind of then trying to kind of like, you know, as to have that as a visual and treat that as kind of the visuals for the podcast and the videos. So, apologies, but, you know, things take time to kind of evolve. Will I be doing a podcast in the future, or an MCOC based podcast? Maybe. I would say once me and Em move to a new house, which hopefully is towards the end part of this year, things can then start getting set up, and then I can start. Em will be doing a lot of the video editing side of things to free up time. If I free up enough time, like an hour or maybe 2 to 3 hours, so I can then plan, write, and also then try and find some like-minded people to kind of work with on a regular basis. Then maybe we'll see what happens from that. But at the moment, the kind of like immediate future, I don't plan to return back to any kind of Marvel Contest of Champions based podcast casting yet. But look, I'd rather kind of like use the time frame to live stream, which I don't have a lot of time for at the moment. But yeah, from this channel, this community within the channel, and also the wider community that have you know, supported Dan and Frontline MCOC as well. Look, I'll put a link to the website if you want to go and check it out. There are still some relevant guides to some of the stuff that's in game at the moment. And yeah, thank you to Dan. And I very much look forward to working with Dan in the future. Like we did a really cool podcast, and I really hope that in the future there's something new that we can collaborate on. But yeah, that's been it for the video. Respect and love to Dan and those that supported our podcast. Funny enough, there's some kind people that did comment on Dan's, you know, Dan's kind of website post about it, you know. So yeah, that's been it. Thank you very much for watching. Check out some other content located on screen, and I'll see you in the next video, which will either be an MCN tomorrow or something else. Much love and goodbye.